Jungkook's breaking point is caught on camera. His raw confession about Jimin stuns everyone and turns the room ice cold. The water bottle slipped from Jungkook's trembling hand, crashing to the floor and drawing every eye in the studio. His voice, low but sharp enough to cut glass, echoed in the stunned silence. "Don't pretend you don't know what you did, Jimin." The production crew froze. Taehyung, standing by the lighting rig, turned his head slowly. Even the makeup artist mascara wand midair stopped breathing. All the warmth that had buzzed in the room just seconds ago evaporated, sucked out by the sheer gravity of Jungkook's words. Jimin didn't move. His jaw was tight, lips sealed, as if holding back an eruption. It was supposed to be just another relaxed variety shoot, Bangtan behind the scenes, candid and comfortable. Instead, a confrontation was unfolding so raw, so unscripted, that the cameras kept rolling, unsure whether to stop or capture history. Jungkook stepped forward slowly, the fluorescent lighting above him casting a harsh glow across his face, flushed, furious, and vulnerable. His black shirt clung to him like a second skin, soaked with sweat, but he didn't seem to notice. His eyes didn't blink. They were fixed on Jimin, like a blade sharpened on one target. "Tell them," Jungkook said, voice shaking. Not from fear, but from the release of years held in. "Tell them what you said to me before that Osaka concert. Tell them what you said after my solo performance in Busan. Or should I tell them how you looked me in the face and said I was nothing without this group?" Jimin's throat worked, but no words came. The silence pressed down like a ceiling caving in. A camera lens whirred softly as it zoomed in, catching every flinch in Jimin's tight expression. His hand twitched, barely noticeable, but Jungkook saw. He always saw. "Years, Hung." The word was spat, not spoken. "Years of pretending like it didn't mess with me. Years of laughing it off while you pushed me harder than anyone else, only to whisper in my ear that I wasn't enough. I kept quiet. I thought it was just your way. Tough love, right?" He gave a hollow laugh, bitter like bile. "But I'm done pretending." Namjoon moved from the side, his brow furrowed, the unspoken leader trying to gauge whether to intervene or let the truth burn. But Jungkook raised a hand, stopping him. "No. Let me speak. You all heard it. You saw it. The snide remarks, the dismissive glances, the praise everyone else got, while I got pressure. You praised Taehyung's vocals. You cried for Yoongi's lyrics. But when I spent nights throwing up from anxiety, you said I needed to man up." Jimin's lips parted then, not to argue but to inhale, like he'd been underwater. And this was the first breath he dared to take in minutes. "You think I hated you," Jungkook continued, stepping closer now. "But the truth is, I loved you too much. I let you shape how I saw myself. I looked at you like a brother, Jimin. Maybe even more than that. But you looked at me like a rival you never asked for." Jimin's eyes flickered. Something cracked in them. Guilt, maybe. Pain. Or perhaps it was recognition. The sound of a mic stand toppling over punctuated the moment. Everyone jolted, but neither Jungkook nor Jimin moved. The air between them vibrated like taut wire. I asked myself 100 times, what did I do wrong? Why was I always trying to earn your approval like a child begging for scraps? Jungkook's voice lowered now, but the weight of his words doubled. I forgot who I was. I started building myself in the reflection of your judgment. One of the staff reached toward the camera, ready to hit pause, but the director motioned to keep rolling. Even he knew this wasn't just personal. This was history. Then finally, Jimin spoke, soft, hoarse, and riddled with something that sounded a lot like heartbreak. You never needed my approval. Then why did you make me feel like I did? Jungkook's voice cracked. Just once. But it was enough to shatter everything. Jimin exhaled sharply and looked around the room at the crew that had stopped moving, at the members who now wore expressions of disbelief and sorrow. His gaze returned to Jungkook, who stood like an open wound. I didn't know, Jimin whispered. I didn't know I was breaking you while I was trying to hold myself together. Jungkook laughed bitterly, turning away, hands on his hips as he stared at the cold floor. Yeah? Well, now you do. The room was a vacuum, emotion sucked tight into a single, deafening pause. Then Jin, standing by the monitor, spoke up, barely above a murmur. We all missed it. We saw the cracks, but none of us looked close enough to see him bleeding. Jungkook didn't respond. He walked to the side, wiping his face, breath ragged. For once, he wasn't afraid of being seen. Jimin stepped forward hesitantly, his own hands trembling now. "I was scared," he said. "I saw how fast you were growing, how the world adored you. I thought, if I didn't push you away, I'd get left behind." Jungkook turned slowly. "So you chose to tear me down instead?" "No," Jimin said, his voice breaking. "I chose wrong." Taehyung, watching it all from behind the light rig, whispered something to himself. Hosok moved forward, finally breaking the invisible line. "Okay," he said, voice calm but firm. "That's enough for now." But Jungkook looked Jimin dead in the eyes one last time. "This was never about revenge," he said quietly. "This was about truth. And now, it's out." Then he walked out of the frame, cameras still rolling, silence following him like a long shadow. The damage was done, the masks had fallen, and the world would never see them the same way again. The sound of the dressing room door slamming echoed through the narrow hallway like a gunshot. Jungkook's breath hitched in his chest as he pressed his back to the wall, his fingers trembling, still buzzing with the residue of everything he had just said. He could still feel the heat of the studio lights on his skin, but it was the heat in his chest that threatened to consume him. The adrenaline hadn't faded. If anything, it was burning brighter now that the weight of silence had fallen again. The hallway smelled of stale coffee, warm cables, and the synthetic cologne someone had sprayed too generously in the makeup area, but none of it registered. His mind was replaying Jimin's face. Not the one he wore for cameras, not the idol mask, but the one from just minutes ago, pale, frozen, fractured. A soft knock startled him. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't hesitant either. Just there. "Jungkook," came a voice low and familiar. "Namjoon." Jungkook didn't answer, didn't even move. But the door opened anyway, and Namjoon stepped inside, his eyes tired, his shoulders heavy like someone carrying 10 years' worth of unspoken truths. "You really weren't going to tell any of us?" Namjoon asked, voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook turned slowly, his jaw clenched. "Tell you what? That I cried myself to sleep after Osaka? That I almost left the group after Busan? That every time Jimin smiled at the fans and then ignored me off stage, I wondered what the hell I did wrong?" Namjoon exhaled, leaning against the counter. "I'm not defending him. I'm not defending anyone. Why now?" Jungkook's laugh was short and hollow. "Because it was never going to stop unless I did." Namjoon nodded slowly, as if he understood, and maybe he did, but it didn't make the air less suffocating. "There's more," Jungkook said suddenly, almost to himself. "So much more." He didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. The weight behind his words hung heavy, pulling the room into a deeper silence. Meanwhile, back in the studio, chaos had taken root beneath the thin surface of professionalism. The director had called for a break, but no one had moved. The crew huddled in corners, whispering, processing. Taehyung sat at the edge of the couch, his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor with the kind of stillness that only came from shock. Jin paced in small circles, muttering under his breath, while Yoongi had pulled out a cigarette despite the no-smoking signs, standing near the open window like it could save him from the storm. Jimin sat alone. Everyone gave him space, but not out of respect, out of fear. No one knew what to say to him. No one knew which version of him they'd be talking to. He was motionless, except for the occasional clench of his fists. His gaze was locked on a fixed point in the distance, but his mind wasn't there. It was trapped in rewind. Jungkook's voice played over and over, cutting deeper each time. "I loved you too much." Jimin hadn't cried. He wanted to, but he didn't know if he had the right to. When the door opened and Taehyung finally stood in front of him, Jimin blinked as if waking from a dream. "Say something," Taehyung said. Not coldly, not warmly, just directly. Like a brother demanding answers not for a fight, but because silence had become unbearable. "I didn't mean to break him," Jimin whispered. Taehyung tilted his head. "But you did. I thought I was pushing him to be better." "No," Taehyung said, his voice growing harder. "You were pushing him because you were afraid he'd outshine you." Jimin's face twisted. "Is that what you all think?" "It's not about what we think. It's about what you did." The tension in the room was unbearable now. Even Yoongi had turned around, his cigarette forgotten, eyes narrowed. Jimin stood up abruptly, the chair screeching behind him. "You think this is just about me? You think I'm the only one who ever made someone feel less than? Jin stepped in. Don't deflect. I'm not. Jimin's voice cracked. But let's not pretend we're saints. You, Jin, how many times did you shut Jungkook down because you thought he was being too loud, too ambitious? And Yoongi, you mocked him for crying during rehearsals. And Namjoon, you always gave more attention to everyone else when Jungkook needed a leader. Yoongi frowned. We all made mistakes, but this isn't about us right now. This is about you and him. You're right. It's about me and him. Jimin snapped, his voice growing raw. Because I saw something in him that terrified me. He was becoming everything I wanted to be. And I panicked. No one moved. Jimin's shoulders fell. I panicked. I didn't know how to be happy for him, so I tried to keep him close by keeping him small. The silence was different now. It wasn't tense. It was devastating. Yoongi spoke slowly. You still love him? Jimin's head shot up. What kind of question is that? An honest one. Jimin didn't answer immediately. He stared at the wall, at the shadows dancing from the moving lights. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe I did. Maybe I still do. But I know I destroyed what we had. Meanwhile, in the dressing room, Jungkook stood in front of the mirror, watching his reflection not to fix his hair, not to adjust his shirt, just to look at himself, really look. For the first time in years, he didn't see the golden maknae. He saw the man who survived being molded, micromanaged, misunderstood. He saw the boy who once admired Jimin so much it hurt, and the adult who had to learn that admiration without respect is just self-erasure. Namjoon placed a hand on his shoulder. Are you okay? Jungkook smiled weakly. Not even close. Namjoon gave a small nod. Then it's time we all stop pretending things are okay. They stepped out together. When Jungkook returned to the studio, every pair of eyes turned to him. The cameras weren't rolling, but the world was watching anyway. He walked toward Jimin, who looked up slowly, bracing for another blow. But Jungkook stopped just in front of him, his tone unexpectedly calm. Why did you do it? He asked. Not just the harsh words, but the silence, the looks, the constant comparison. Jimin took a deep breath. Because I hated who I was when I wasn't the best. Jungkook blinked, surprised by the honesty. I hated feeling replaceable, Jimin said, his voice thin. And you made me feel like I already was. Jungkook's jaw clenched. That's not my fault. No, Jimin agreed. It's mine. Another pause. Then Jungkook asked, so what now? I don't know, Jimin said honestly. But I want to fix it. Jungkook shook his head. Some things don't get fixed. They get faced. Then let me face it. Jungkook stepped back, crossing his arms. Start by saying it, out loud, to everyone. Jimin hesitated. Then, turning to the others and the still silent crew, he spoke. I belittled Jungkook. I judged him. I let my fear turn into cruelty. I was jealous, insecure, and I never told him how much I depended on him being around to feel okay about myself. Every word was a stone pulled from his chest. Jungkook watched him carefully, gauging sincerity in every twitch, every breath. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he nodded. Thank you. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. The team disbanded slowly. The staff, still shaken, returned to their tasks with wary hands. The shoot was canceled, understandably. But as the members filed out, one by one, Taehyung lingered behind, watching Jungkook. You surprised me, Taehyung said. I never thought you'd actually say it all out loud. Jungkook gave a half smile. Neither did I. Are you okay? I will be. Taehyung nodded and placed a hand on his shoulder briefly before walking off. Jungkook sat alone for a moment, the cameras now truly off, the world behind him beginning to tilt into a new direction. He exhaled, slow and long. He had broken something today, but maybe, just maybe, he had also broken free. The lights in the conference room buzzed faintly, their dim fluorescent glow painting everyone's face in a sterile, unflattering sheen. It was the kind of room designed for contracts, strategy meetings, controlled PR damage, not for emotional fallout. But that morning, the space had been hastily cleared. Chairs pulled into a loose circle, walls stripped of branding, as if the building itself wanted no part in what was about to unfold. Hybe's upper management had been silent for the last 12 hours. But today, the summons came in. All members, no stylists, no managers, just them and the company, and the aftermath. Jungkook was the first to arrive, not because he was eager, but because he didn't want to be the one walking into an already loaded room. He wore black from head to toe, no logos, no layers, just clean lines and shadows. His eyes were sharp, but tired. Every step echoed. The second door opened 10 minutes later. Jimin stepped in, looking like he hadn't slept. His hoodie was wrinkled, his hair was unstyled, but his face was stripped of any performance. This wasn't Park Jimin, the global star. This was the boy beneath it, standing with shoulders curved inward, as if bracing for more impact. They made eye contact. A flicker, not of rage, not even of sorrow, just weariness. And the kind of mutual understanding only people who had wounded each other deeply could share. Namjoon entered next, followed by Jin, Yoongi, Taehyung, and Hoseok. None of them spoke. Not yet. They all took seats, forming a semicircle, like something between a tribunal and an intervention. Then the door clicked again. This time, it was the director of public relations, followed closely by a senior executive from HYBE. She placed a folder on the table without ceremony and cleared her throat. "We have a situation," she said. Her voice clipped but not unkind. "And since it involves all of you, your image, your group, your legacy, we've decided to hear everything before deciding how to proceed. This will be off the record. For now." No one responded. "Jungkook," she continued, looking at him directly, "we've seen the footage. You weren't wrong for speaking your truth, but the fallout from this is considerable." Jungkook nodded slowly. "I don't regret it." The PR director nodded. "That's not why we're here. We're not here to punish. We're here to understand." Jimin shifted in his seat. "Can I say something before this becomes another damage control meeting?" The executive gestured for him to continue. "I've heard him," Jimin said, voice low. "And I didn't need a camera crew to realize that. What I did to Jungkook wasn't one moment, it was years. Quiet, calculated things. Things I didn't even admit to myself until he said it out loud." Everyone was watching him now. Jimin continued, "But it wasn't just me. This company, this culture, it made it so easy to push people down in the name of discipline, in the name of improvement. I used it as a shield, and Jungkook was always the easiest target." Jungkook's jaw flexed. "Because I never fought back." Jimin turned toward him. "Because I knew you wouldn't. Not until now." Jin spoke for the first time, his voice rough. "Why did you hate him so much?" "I didn't hate him," Jimin said. "I hated that I couldn't be him. That everything I worked for painfully, slowly, he made look effortless." He walked into a room, and everyone tilted toward him. Fans, staff, even some of you. Yoongi scoffed softly. "That's not his fault." "I know that," Jimin snapped, "but I didn't want to. So I found faults, or created them, made jokes at his expense, questioned his decisions, told him he needed to be more humble when I was the one choking on my own insecurity." Jungkook's voice cracked slightly. "You told me once that I was only good because the team covered my weaknesses." Jimin flinched. "I remember. I believed you," Jungkook said. "I remember crying in the dorm bathroom after you said that. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I thought, maybe I was nothing outside of BTS. Taehyung's hands were clenched in his lap. "Why didn't you tell us any of this?" "Because," Jungkook said, turning to him, "I didn't want to break the illusion. I didn't want to be the problem. You know how it is every time something goes wrong. People ask, who ruined the group? I didn't want it to be me." Namjoon's voice was hoarse. "It's not you. It never was." There was a pause. Then, suddenly, Hoseok stood. "I'm tired," he said. "Tired of walking on eggshells around this tension. We've all felt it for years, and now it's exploded. So let's stop pretending this is just between two people." Everyone turned toward him. Hosea continued, his usual sunshine demeanor stripped bare. "We all contributed, in ways we didn't want to admit. Sometimes by saying things, sometimes by not saying anything at all. How many times did we see Jungkook shrink and just let it happen?" Namjoon swallowed hard. "Too many," Hoseok said. Jimin blinked quickly, as if trying not to cry. "So what do I do now?" "Fix it," Jungkook replied almost instantly. But not for me. For yourself. Because you've been wearing a mask longer than any of us. Jimin looked down. Then, something unexpected happened. The HYBE executive leaned forward. This, she said, gesturing to the rawness in the room, is the most honest moment your group has ever had. It's terrifying. It's damaging. But it's also real. She slid the folder forward. We were going to ask you to film an apology video, but maybe that's not what this needs. Maybe it needs a reckoning. No one spoke. We want to document this process, she continued. Not for PR, but for the truth. A private, internal documentary. Your sessions, your healing, your confessions, if you're willing. Jungkook looked around. At Taehyung's stunned face, at Yoongi's guarded expression, at Namjoon's grief-stricken eyes, at Jimin's haunted silence. He nodded. I'm willing, he said. Jimin exhaled. Me too. Namjoon rubbed his face. Let's burn everything down, then build again. That evening, the members were sent home with nothing but silence trailing them. There were no stylists, no staff, just them and their thoughts. But for Jungkook, going home didn't bring peace. His apartment, sleek and minimal, felt sterile, like it had never been lived in, only visited. He walked to the bathroom mirror again, much like the night before. But this time, he didn't just look at his face. He stared into his own eyes, challenging them, and for the first time, he whispered to himself, "You're enough." No one heard it, but it didn't matter, because he did. And that was how healing began, not with applause, not with reconciliation, but with a whisper spoken into silence. You didn't think I'd say anything, did you? Jungkook's voice was low, heavy with the weight of withheld rage, as it cut through the air like a blade. He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. The stillness in the private rehearsal room was already taut, stretched to the edge of a snap. Rain smacked against the tall windows behind him, a staccato rhythm that mirrored the chaos inside. Jimin stood on the opposite end of the room, hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders drawn up in visible defense. He'd been waiting, bracing for this confrontation since the closed-door meeting at HYBE, but he hadn't expected it to happen today. Not when he'd only just walked in. Not when the cameras weren't even rolling. Not when the others hadn't arrived yet. But maybe that was why Jungkook chose this moment. No audience. No filters. Just them and years of everything unsaid. I thought you already said it all, Jimin muttered, not looking up. No, Jungkook snapped, stepping closer. I said what you did. I haven't said how deep it went, or how long I let myself rot just to protect the image of you I wanted to believe in. Jimin's jaw tensed, and he finally met his eyes. You think I had it easy? I don't care how you had it, Jungkook hissed. I care about how you used what you had against me. Jimin took a step back. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Jungkook's voice cracked now, the emotion spilling over. Every time you smiled in front of the fans and then turned cold when we were alone. Every time you praised the others in interviews and skipped over me like I was some goddamn placeholder. You knew what you were doing. I was trying to survive, Jimin shot back. You were becoming everyone's favorite. Every magazine, every comment section, every billboard, it was you. All the time. I didn't know how to stay relevant standing next to a golden boy. Jungkook's laugh was dry and humorless. You think I asked for that? You think I didn't spend nights wishing people would just stop comparing us? I was never comparing, Jimin whispered. And there it was again, that flash of something real under his anger. I was terrified of being forgotten. Then why didn't you come to me? Jungkook said, voice softening only for a second. Why didn't you say it? Because I was proud. Because I was ashamed. Because somewhere along the way I convinced myself you'd never understand. Jungkook looked at him, really looked. The circles under Jimin's eyes, the bite marks on his bottom lip, the hollow beneath his cheekbones. He looked like a man carrying guilt like a coffin. I would have understood, Jungkook said. Because I was doing the same damn thing. Trying to be everything, for everyone. And you made me feel like I still wasn't enough. Jimin's lip quivered. I know. The door opened then. Taehyung stepped in, immediately freezing as the tension hit him like a wave. His eyes flicked from one to the other, and without a word, he slowly backed out and closed the door again. Neither of them laughed. Neither of them moved. "I'm not done," Jungkook said. Jimin nodded. "I know. I saw the messages," Jungkook said, eyes narrowing. Jimin's head jerked up. "What?" "Your messages to one of the staffers. About me. From last year." Jimin's face paled. "That wasn't—" "It was you, Jimin," Jungkook interrupted. "Calling me reckless. Calling me immature. Saying I was riding the group's fame without putting in the work. I never meant for you to see that," Jimin whispered. "That's not the point," Jungkook shouted, finally letting the dam break. "The point is that you said it. You believed it. Even after all the nights we spent bleeding for this band, you still saw me as less than you." Jimin's voice shook. "I was angry. You were doing all these side projects, and we were barely talking. I thought you were leaving us behind." Jungkook took another step forward. "So you tried to sabotage me from the inside?" "I was scared," Jimin snapped. "I was scared you'd leave, and we'd fall apart." "Then why didn't you support me?" Jungkook cried. "Why didn't you ask to join me? Collaborate? Instead, you turned everyone against me." Jimin opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "I heard what you told Hoseok last October," Jungkook said, the words like glass. "You told him I was changing, that I was getting too big for the group, that I'd forgotten where I came from." Jimin's eyes welled with tears. "I was projecting. You were growing, and I was stuck." "No," Jungkook said bitterly. "You weren't stuck. You were scared of being overshadowed." Jimin finally sank onto the bench in the corner, burying his face in his hands. His sobs weren't dramatic. They were quiet, muffled, like someone who'd been holding back for too long and didn't want to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing the flood. Jungkook stood over him, his fists clenched, knuckles white. "I can't keep protecting you," he said, his voice barely audible. Jimin looked up, red-eyed. "You never needed to." "You're wrong," Jungkook said. "I've been protecting you for years. Taking the blame when you were cold, laughing off your passive jabs, covering for you when you showed up late or lashed out. I kept making excuses for you because I didn't want to lose you. Not just as a teammate, but as someone I loved." Jimin's expression crumbled. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I did," Jungkook replied. "But I don't know if I still do." The door opened again this time. Namjoon, Yoongi, and Taehyung entered together. The room was still thick with smoke, but now it had witnesses. Namjoon looked at both of them, eyes stormy. "Jungkook," he said carefully, "do you want to file a formal grievance against Jimin?" The question hung in the air like a final card being played. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. He looked at Jimin, small, broken, quiet, and then back at the others. "No," he said finally, "but I want accountability." Namjoon nodded solemnly. "Then let's get it." They sat in a tight circle again, but this time it wasn't company mandated. This was them choosing to face the ugliest parts of their story. Jimin spoke first. "I betrayed your trust. I used my own pain as a weapon. I hurt you, Jungkook, and I don't know how to make that right, but I want to." Yoongi spoke next. "We all owe you an apology for not stepping in, for letting you drown." Taehyung leaned forward. "And I owe you one for pretending not to notice. I saw the moments. I just didn't want to get involved." Jin, usually the comic relief, was deadly serious. "You're not our maknae anymore. You're our equal. Maybe you always were." Namjoon finished. "So what do you need from us, Jungkook?" Jungkook looked at each of them. "Truth. No more sugarcoating. No more pretending. And space. Space to decide what kind of relationship I want with each of you, starting with him." He turned to Jimin. "I forgive you," he said. "But I don't trust you. Not yet." Jimin nodded slowly, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I'll earn it." "I hope so," Jungkook whispered, "because everything you hid is coming back to you now." And with that, they didn't hug. They didn't cry into each other's shoulders. They just sat, together, finally honest, finally real. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a beginning. The soft whirring of the elevator masked the tense silence between the five of them as they ascended the glass tower of HYBE's main headquarters. The tinted reflections on the metal panel walls did little to hide the emotions twisting in their faces. Taehyung stood closest to the corner, arms crossed, chewing on his bottom lip in frustration. Jin's fingers were fidgeting with the seam of his coat. Hoseok's eyes, usually filled with energy, were distant, unmoving. Namjoon didn't shift his gaze from the floor. And Yoongi hadn't said a word since they left Jungkook's apartment that morning. They were going to face the board. Not because of a scandal, but because of the truth. And not the kind of truth sanitized for press releases or smoothed out in edited interviews, but the real, raw, terrifying kind of truth that threatened to rearrange everything they had built for the last 10 years. Because Jungkook had made a decision, and no one, not even Jimin, knew if the group would survive it. 2 days had passed since the confrontation in the practice room. In that time, something had shifted in Jungkook's demeanor. He was no longer trembling. He didn't hesitate when he spoke. His voice had taken on an unnerving stillness, like a lake that had once been a storm, controlled, purposeful, not vengeful, but resolute. That morning, he had called Namjoon and said, "I'm going to say everything. Even the things that were supposed to stay hidden. Even the things that make me look bad. And I need you all to decide if you're going to stand behind me or walk away." The elevator dinged. The glass doors opened to the top floor. The boardroom loomed ahead, a long obsidian table in the center, surrounded by executives, legal counsel, and PR specialists. Everything smelled sterile, like metal, ink, and faint lavender. At the far end of the room, Jungkook was already there, seated alone, arms resting calmly on the table, a sealed envelope in front of him. He didn't look up when they walked in. Not until Jimin entered, silently, last. There was an empty chair beside Jungkook. No one dared to take it. The Hybe CEO cleared his throat and gestured toward the seats. "Please." Once they had all settled, the CEO leaned forward. "Before we begin, Jungkook, I need to confirm. Are you absolutely sure you want this discussion on record?" "Yes," Jungkook said simply. "Even if it puts the group in a vulnerable position?" "Yes. Even if it puts you in a vulnerable position? I'm already in one," he said flatly. The CEO nodded and gestured to a young assistant who started a discreet recording device in the center of the table. Jungkook pushed the envelope forward. "This is a timeline. My timeline. From the first time I was reprimanded unfairly, backstage in 2017, to every incident, message, or silent betrayal that led to what happened last week. It includes names, dates, context." One of the board members raised an eyebrow. "Is this an accusation?" "No," Jungkook said. "It's a confession, because I was complicit in my own silence. I let myself be minimized. I let my image be used to deflect from internal dysfunction. I smiled through it all, and now that smile feels like a lie." Another member cleared his throat. "Why now?" "Because I don't want to hate the people I love." That was the first time Jimin flinched. Jungkook continued, voice calm. "I've been hurting for a long time, but I don't want to turn this into a war. I want healing. Honest, brutal, public healing. No editing, no damage control, just the truth. And if that means losing fans, losing deals, so be it. But I won't lose myself." The room fell silent. Then Namjoon spoke. "I stand with him," he said. Taehyung followed. "So do I." Then Yoongi. "Me too." Hoseok's voice cracked. "Always." All eyes turned to Jimin. He looked at Jungkook, then down at his own hands. "I can't undo what I did, but I can stand next to the person I tried to diminish, if he'll let me." Jungkook looked at him. There was no hate in his eyes, just something deeper, sadder. "You don't need my permission," he said. "You need to own your part." "I do," Jimin said quietly. "I own all of it." The CEO folded his hands. "If this proceeds, if we follow your lead, Jungkook, what do you want from the company?" "Transparency," Jungkook replied. "Support for a group-wide internal therapy process, not private sessions, joint ones, cameras included. We record our breakdowns, our repairs, and we release it, unfiltered." There was a sharp intake of breath from one of the PR executives. "You're proposing we expose our most valuable asset's darkest moments to the public?" "Yes," Jungkook said. "Because maybe then people will stop expecting perfection, and maybe we'll stop demanding it from each other." No one moved. No one dared. Jimin finally spoke again. He was never the problem. We were. We just didn't want to admit we were the ones who failed him. The meeting lasted another 2 hours. Logistics, legalities, planning. But when it ended, something had irrevocably shifted. The next day, the members walked into a soundproof studio. There were cameras unmanned, just static observers in the corners. The lights were soft, ambient. A round table in the center, chairs arranged like a summit. No scripts, no makeup, no safety nets. Just them. Jungkook took a seat first. Then Yoongi, Taehyung, Jin, Hoseok, Namjoon, and finally, Jimin. The red light on the cameras blinked on, and Jungkook spoke. "Day 1, he said, voice clear. "My name is Jungkook, and this is what it looks like when an idol stops pretending." Then he turned to the others and began. The red camera light blinked silently in the corner of the studio, unblinking like an impartial witness. Every member of BTS sat around the circular table, the weight of 10 years pressing down on their shoulders. No stylists, no PR teams, no management peeking through glass, only raw truth, stripped of filters. The air was cold and dry, thick with the scent of static and secrets. Jungkook sat with his hands clasped in front of him, not fidgeting, not moving, just watching. His gaze moved across each of the 6 faces before him. Some met his eyes. Some looked away. The camera kept rolling. "My name is Jungkook," he said again, quieter now. "And before we even begin, I need to say something. Not to the fans, not to the company, to you." He looked straight at Jimin. "You broke me." The silence was immediate and suffocating. Jimin didn't flinch. Not this time. His face was unreadable, except for the way his knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the table. Jungkook continued. "But I let you." Jin shifted in his seat. Hoseok bit his lip. Taehyung leaned slightly forward, breath shallow. "For years, I told myself I had to take it. That I deserved it. That if I didn't keep the peace, I'd be the reason this group fell apart. So I swallowed it. Every cutting remark. Every time you dismissed my ideas. Every time you looked at me like I was competition instead of family. I told myself, it's okay. He's just stressed. He doesn't mean it." "But you did mean it, Jimin. You meant every single word." Jimin spoke finally, voice raspy. "I know." "No, you don't," Jungkook said, calm but seething. "Because if you did, you would have stopped before I got to the point of almost walking out that door. Do you remember Busan?" Jimin blinked. "Of course I do." "Do you remember what you said backstage after my solo?" Jimin hesitated, then nodded. "I said you were stealing the spotlight." "No," Jungkook snapped. "You said, enjoy it while it lasts. The fans always move on." You said that to me minutes after I got off stage, still shaking from the adrenaline, from trying so hard to make the city proud. You said that like it was nothing. And I believed you. I started doubting myself that night. I couldn't even accept praise without hearing your voice in my head, telling me it was temporary. Jimin's voice cracked. "I was jealous." "I don't care," Jungkook said. "You used your insecurity as a weapon, and no one stopped you, not even me." He turned to the rest of them now. "And the rest of you? You watched it happen. You heard the things he said. You saw the way he treated me. And you all stayed silent. You laughed it off. You told me not to take it personally." Namjoon sighed. "We didn't realize how far it went." "No," Jungkook said, eyes narrowing. "You didn't want to realize it. You didn't want to risk conflict. You were all willing to lose me as long as the world still loved BTS. Yoongi rubbed his temples. "That's not fair." "It's exactly fair," Jungkook cut in. "You thought I was strong enough to handle it. That because I smiled and danced and hit every note, I was invincible. But I wasn't. I was bleeding. And none of you looked close enough to see." Taehyung spoke softly. "We see now." "Too late," Jungkook said, leaning back in his chair. "The damage is done. You don't get to claim redemption without facing what you ignored." Jin's voice was rough when he finally spoke. "Then tell us. All of it. Every moment we missed." Jungkook's eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. "You missed everything. The night I had a panic attack in the bathroom before a Tokyo show and couldn't breathe for 20 minutes. I told the manager. He told me to focus on the choreography. You missed the day I skipped meals for 3 days before our photo shoot because I read a comment comparing my face to a bulldog," I told the nutritionist. She handed me celery. You missed the moment I stood on the rooftop of our hotel in LA, wondering if anyone would notice if I disappeared. And do you know what stopped me? No one answered. Jungkook's voice dropped to a whisper. Taehyung knocked on my door, asked if I wanted to watch a movie. Taehyung's hand trembled. You saved me, Jungkook said, his voice breaking. And you didn't even know. Jimin covered his face with his hands. Hoseok stared at the floor, eyes glazed. Jin was frozen. Namjoon finally stood, pacing slowly around the room. We were so focused on being legends, Namjoon said quietly. We forgot to be brothers. Jungkook exhaled shakily. You treated me like an asset, not a person, and I let you, because I was so desperate to belong. Yoongi finally looked up. So what now? Do we disband? Do we go our separate ways? I don't know, Jungkook said. That's not my decision. But I know I'm done pretending this is okay. I'm done showing up for group content and smiling when I feel like screaming. I'm done being your emotional trash bin. If we want to move forward, we start over. From zero. As equals. As people. Not products. Jimin finally dropped his hands. His face was raw, red, streaked with tears. I want that. I want to be someone you can trust again. Jungkook stared at him. Then earn it. I will. The door opened, startling them all. A production assistant poked her head in, her voice trembling. Sorry. The live stream is already trending globally. The raw footage. Someone leaked it. No one moved. Jungkook was the first to speak. Let them watch. The assistant hesitated. Are you sure? Yes, he said. Let the world see what we really are. Maybe then we can finally be free of what we pretended to be. The door closed. The silence was heavy again, but this time it was different, not suffocating, transformative. Namjoon sat back down. Day one, huh? Jungkook nodded. Taehyung reached out slowly, placing his hand palm up on the table. Jungkook looked at it, and after a long pause, he placed his hand on top. Then Jimin did, then Hoseok, then Yoongi, then Jin, and finally, Namjoon. 7 hands, wounded, shaking. But together. A beginning, not a conclusion. The red light on the camera blinked, still recording. The chaos didn't start in the boardrooms, not in the press conferences or the late-night emergency meetings. It started in living rooms, in kitchens, in quiet bedrooms lit by phone screens. The leaked footage had spread like gasoline on fire. Within 6 hours, over 38 million views were counted across unofficial uploads. Fans from every corner of the world were dissecting every second, every breath, every tremor in Jungkook's voice, every flicker of guilt in Jimin's eyes. Headlines didn't say BTS in crisis. They said, the silence is broken. And it was. Outside HYBE's headquarters, fans had gathered in small groups, many crying, some holding signs with just 2 words. We see you. But inside, behind bulletproof glass and 2 layers of private security, 7 men stood in the eye of a storm they themselves had summoned. It was 2 days since the table talk. The company had done little to intervene, except issue a sterile statement confirming the authenticity of the footage and promising a deeper look into internal well-being practices. But fans didn't want HR policies. They wanted the rest of the story. And so, in an unprecedented move, BTS decided they'd film again. No scripts, no edits, no corporate filter, only 1 camera, 1 room, and 1 truth. The studio was dimmer this time, not because the lighting was adjusted, but because the mood had darkened. The first recording had cracked the surface. What came next would be the eruption. Jungkook arrived first. Again, he sat in the same seat, same posture, but his eyes weren't tired anymore. They were fierce, alert, like someone who had lived too long in a dream and was now fully awake in the nightmare. Jimin entered second. His hoodie hung loosely from his frame, sleeves hiding his hands. He didn't speak. He simply nodded at Jungkook and sat across from him, folding in on himself like a boy who didn't know how to be seen anymore. One by one, the others entered. Namjoon, Yoongi, Jin, Hoseok, Taehyung, all silent, all knowing. The camera blinked red, rolling. Jungkook didn't start this time. Namjoon did. There's something I need to say, he said quietly. To Jungkook. And to all of you. They turned toward him. Namjoon's eyes were glossy, but he didn't look away. I knew. Not all of it. Not the worst of it. But I knew something was wrong. Jungkook's expression didn't change, but his fingers curled slightly against his thigh. I saw you spiraling, Namjoon continued. I saw you shrinking around us. I saw how you stopped making suggestions during group meetings, how you started hesitating before speaking. I saw it, and I didn't do anything, because I told myself if I addressed it, the whole thing would crack, and I wasn't ready to risk the band. Then you chose the band over me, Jungkook said. Yes, Namjoon admitted, his voice trembling. I did, and I'm sorry. Jin broke the silence next. You're not the only one who knew. Jungkook turned to him. I heard Jimin's comments, Jin said. Backstage, in the car, on the plane. I heard him dig at you, and I thought you could handle it, because you always did. Jungkook blinked slowly. And that made it okay? No, Jin whispered. It made me a coward. Jungkook looked away. I was supposed to be the eldest, Jin said. I was supposed to protect you, but I let him chip away at you. I let everyone expect perfection from you without asking what it was costing you. I smiled and told the staff, he's strong, he's fine, while you were falling apart. I hated you for that, Jungkook said, voice suddenly sharp. Do you remember Seoul Dome, the night before the final show? You told me not to overthink it. You told me to be grateful when I confessed I was struggling to breathe backstage. I had a panic attack. And you told me to smile for the fans. Jin's face crumpled. I thought I was helping. I thought I was terrified of what it meant if you weren't okay. Yoongi spoke up next. I lied to protect you. Jungkook turned toward him slowly. I told staff that you were just tired. I told them not to worry when you missed vocal rehearsals. I told them you were fine when I knew you weren't. Because I thought it was safer to let you be exhausted than let you be vulnerable. Jungkook's hands were shaking now. I thought I was shielding you from the pressure, Yoongi said. But all I did was bury you in it. Jungkook didn't speak. His silence was louder than any scream. I saw your exhaustion, Yoongi said. But I didn't know about Busan. I didn't know about the rooftop. And when I heard it, I felt sick. You should, Jungkook said coldly. Because I was 15 when you all started telling me who I needed to be. And I listened. And I lost myself. Jimin looked up, voice cracking. Why didn't you leave? Because I loved you, Jungkook said. All of you. And I thought if I loved hard enough, it would change you. That if I stayed, you'd start seeing me. But you didn't. You only saw what you needed me to be. Taehyung finally spoke. I saw you crying in Osaka. Everyone turned. I saw you in the hallway, Taehyung continued. You didn't know I was there. You were crouched against the wall, shaking. I was going to come over, but I didn't, because I told myself if I ignored it, it would go away. You left me, Jungkook whispered. I did, Taehyung admitted. I was afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that if you broke, I'd break too. A tear rolled down Jungkook's cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. I wanted someone to fight for me. We didn't, Hoseok said. And we should have. Jimin's voice was hoarse. I want to say I'm sorry again, but I know it doesn't mean anything unless I show you. Jungkook finally looked at him. Then show me. How? Jimin asked, voice trembling. Start telling the truth, Jungkook said. All of it. Jimin swallowed hard. I told staff you were difficult to work with when you started missing meetings. I told a director that you were getting arrogant. I downplayed your solo work when I spoke with producers. I made fun of your voice when you weren't around. I said things to fans I shouldn't have. All because I wanted to be the favorite again. Taehyung looked horrified. Namjoon closed his eyes. Hoseok wiped a tear. Jimin kept going. I said those things because I was hurting. But that doesn't excuse them. I betrayed you. Publicly. And privately. I mocked your growth because it reminded me of how stagnant I felt. And I told myself that if I could chip away at your shine, I'd feel better. But I didn't. I just became someone I hated. Jungkook exhaled. That's a start. Jimin nodded slowly. Namjoon placed a hand on the table. The world is watching now, and I'm not ashamed, because maybe we should have been watched more carefully all along. Jungkook looked around the room. These weren't his hyungs. Not right now. They weren't his bandmates. They were just 7 men. stripped bare. Finally honest. I don't know what comes next, Jungkook said. But I know I won't survive if we keep pretending. Namjoon nodded. Then we stop pretending. Yoongi wiped his face. And we start listening. Hoseok whispered. And we heal. Jimin whispered. And we rebuild. Jungkook looked at all of them. You want me here? You want me in this group? They all nodded. Then let's make it worth it, he said. This time not for the fans, not for the awards, for us. The camera kept rolling. The world kept watching. And BTS, for the first time, began again. The door to Studio C closed with a soft thud, sealing them in again. But this time, it didn't feel like just a studio. It felt like a chamber one filled with history, ghosts, and confessions too big to be contained in a single conversation. The air was thicker than usual. Not with dust, but with unspoken truths and emotions waiting to combust. It was the fourth session since the unfiltered footage went viral, and the public was no longer watching out of curiosity. They were watching to understand, to witness what idols looked like when the masks finally fell apart. This wasn't scandal anymore. This was survival. The world wasn't looking at them as gods now. The pedestal had cracked. And strangely, none of them wanted to fix it. Jungkook sat quietly at the far end of the room, hoodie up, jaw tight. His fingers played absently with the frayed thread on his sleeve. Jimin walked in 5 minutes late. Again. And though he offered a brief nod, Jungkook didn't look at him. The distance between them had started to change. Less fire, more ice. Not rage, disappointment. Namjoon was already seated, legs crossed, holding a pen though there was no notebook. Jin stood against the back wall, leaning silently, arms folded. Hoseok and Taehyung exchanged glances as they took their seats. Yoongi entered last, dropped into his chair, and rubbed his eyes as if he hadn't slept in days. The red light blinked on. No one said anything at first. Then Jungkook looked up. His voice was quiet, controlled. Do you remember that night in Bangkok? Jin's brows furrowed. Which one? Jungkook's eyes locked on his. The night you slapped me. A beat of stunned silence dropped across the room like a dead weight. Jimin's eyes widened. Taehyung flinched. Hoseok sat back slowly. Namjoon froze. Jin's face paled. I didn't think you remembered. I was 18, Jungkook said, still calm. We had just finished a shoot. I forgot my cue during the ending segment. You were angry. You said I was getting careless, that I needed to be snapped back into place. You slapped me. No one said anything, not even the manager. Jin's hands shook. I was under pressure. I thought I was responsible for keeping everyone in line? Jungkook's voice rose slightly. You thought hitting me would keep me in line? Jin swallowed hard. I was wrong. I was young too. I didn't know how to lead. I didn't know what else to do.